Welcome back to a special midterms roadshow edition of AM Joy, coming to you live from Centennial Park in Atlanta, Georgia. We're just in the last hour. On this show, I spoke with the woman who could make history by becoming the nation's first African-American woman governor. The race has been marked by voter suppression tactics that critics say have been deployed by Abrams' opponent, current Georgia Secretary of State Brian Kemp, who has a long history of purging voters in this state. Let's bring in my friend, NBC News correspondent Katy, NBC and MSNBC, we share her too, coming to you live from a Brian Kemp campaign event in Peachtree Corners, Georgia. All right, Katy, I feel like we're in two different countries, right? Because there's this sort of Abrams world and there's the Kemp world. Give us a read of what Kemp world is thinking this morning.
You know, that's exactly what we were talking about last night, because you and I were both at the Stacey Abrams Obama event, and not just the demographics of the event were completely different than the demographics are here, but the way people were talking was completely different. You heard a lot of people talking about health care at the Abrams event, a lot of people talking about finding a way to come together, finding unity, and the division that we're seeing in our politics. Here, I've talked to a number of women, because all the experts say, and the campaigns will say privately, that it's going to come down to the female vote, specifically how maybe white Republican women break, and if they stay with the Republican or if they move over to Stacey Abrams. So I've been talking to women here and trying to get a sense of why they like Brian Kemp, and it falls very much in line with a lot of the rhetoric that we hear from Donald Trump, a lot of the ideas we hear from Donald Trump. Immigration is a big priority for them. We're also hearing about health care. I talked to one lady who said that she doesn't want to see socialism. Two ladies both saying they don't want to see socialism. They see Stacey Abrams as a socialist who will give health care to people who don't deserve it. Immigration again comes up, and what happened at the border. One woman was saying that she understands that the president and the administration made some mistakes at the border, but they're working to correct it. So it is a much different move, a much different set of priorities at the two different events. But I do want to talk to one lady, Rachel, who's here with me now. Rachel, when you come out to a Kemp event, what is the #1 reason you're here?
So good morning. I am a supporter of Brian's and have been for a number of years. I've known him for a while. And so I would be here today because of him. But on top of that, as a native Georgian and actually native to Atlanta, I have watched the difference as our state has shifted from Democrat leadership into Republican leadership. And without a doubt, the last few years under Republican leadership in the governor's mansion, all the way through all of our constitutional officers, this state is moving ahead. There's a reason why for years we've been named the #1 state to do business. There's a reason why we're on the short list for HQ2 to be here. There's a reason why Mercedes-Benz moved here. There's a reason why my employer has decided to to invest in Gwinnett County and to stay here. And so I say all that to say that Brian Kemp is the candidate who is going to continue to help us move forward. And
so for you, it's the economy.
It's absolutely the economy, and you know, that's the thing. It's the economy stupid, right? That's been around for a long time, and for me, it's true. My paycheck is better than it has been. You know, all of those things kind of compile.
Let me ask you one other question. When I was at the Abrams event last night, and a lot of voters were talking about wanting to find unity. They were also talking a lot about health care. Are those two things that come into your mind? Do you think Brian Kemp is somebody that can bridge a gap in this state if he were to win between Republican and Democratic voters?
So again, I think because Brian is also, you know, an Atlanta or a Georgia native. He's from outside of Atlanta and Athens. He knows that there are two Georgias and that we have to work together to bring them together. It is the rural areas that healthcare is probably the biggest issue for them because of the hospitals that are closing and the lack of access. When 159 counties and you have so far to go to get to something, the people in South Georgia have been turning out for him.
Yeah.
I think that tells you who of the two candidates is going to do the best to reach out and make sure that health care is accessible.
Joy, I don't have to tell you this. It's going to be a close race. It already is a close race. There's a decimal point percentage between the two candidates right now. It's very likely to go off to a runoff on Tuesday if one does not win 50+1%. And as you know, it's a bit of a cloud of controversy because Brian Kemp is the one who would be in charge of a recount if there was a recount, as he is the AG of this state. So, Joy, We're going to be here through Tuesday. We're going to be paying close attention. We're going to be keeping a close eye specifically on women and where they break.
You drew the hot hand on election night. You're going to be here in Georgia. But I want to really quickly, if you still have the lovely lady you just spoke with near you, would you mind asking her, Katy, if, two quick questions, if she's concerned that the national story about voter suppression is harming the state and is harming the perception of the state, and whether the attacks on Hollywood and the industry that pumps so much money into the state, does she worry that those things are actually going to harm the state?
Two questions, and these are from our anchor, Joy. One, voter suppression has become a national issue. Are you worried that it's damaged the perception of this state?
That's a really good question. So, you know, we say perception is reality, right? I live in Gwinnett County, which is where we are today, and it's sort of been ground zero for some of that. I am very close to the Gwinnett Elections Board. I have watched how they have processed things. There is no doubt in my mind, number one, everyone who is eligible to vote should be able to vote. Brian Kemp does not want anyone to not vote.
He keeps losing court cases, though.
Well, but losing court cases is a stay is not losing a court case. A stay is we need to look at something. And don't forget, the laws that he's supporting on the exact match, that was under President Obama, and so he's been following that law. So
does it concern you that it affects more African American voters than it affects white voters?
I think if it affects anyone, it would affect everyone. And
it affects, I think, 70% or so. Joy, you might know this stat off the top of your head better than I do, but I think it's 70% or so African American voters are affected proportionally by exact match.
Okay, so I don't know why you would think that. It seems to me that what you are
that's what the statistics show.
What I think you are suggesting is that African American voters are unable to follow instructions and to be able to process.
Oh, no, it's not what I'm suggesting. It's what the statistics show. It's not my conclusion.
I disagree, and I think that you could take statistics to do whatever, but I can say that in the state of Georgia, there is no one in this room today, there is no one in this state, and our Secretary of State has been following the law, and we want everyone to turn out and vote. And I would encourage anybody who hasn't voted yet, Tuesday, be there. I don't ever vote early because I think it's crazy and I like to vote on Tuesday. Be in line with me on Tuesday. I love to stand there and talk to people. So
and if they get turned away, what should they do?
If they get turned, no one will be turned away. You can always vote a provisional ballot, fill it out, and then follow up with your provisional ballot.
One just very quick question because we've run out of time. GOPer was here. Will Ferrell was here for Stacey Abrams. There's been a lot of quote-unquote Hollywood money that has poured into her race. How do you feel about that? What do you think the effect is?
Really? You know, those folks can come to Georgia if they want to, but I would suggest, particularly to Oprah, who I think everybody admires and respects, she's from Chicago. Perhaps she should go home and look at her own state and try to help them, who every day we see in the news, there are things there that break my heart, and I think breaks everyone's heart in the country, and I'd love for her to focus on that instead of focusing on Georgia.
Rachel, thank you so much for talking to us. We appreciate it. Joy, I believe those
Katy,
answered your questions.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Katy. All right.